Hey everyone, we're here for our next session. We have Neil from the Donut app. He'll be doing a talk on bridging the gap from traditional finance to DeFi. And once he starts talking, can you guys just confirm in the chat that you can hear him?
Hey everyone, super stoked to be here. Just wanted some confirmation that you can hear me before I get going. I think that's fine. I'm happy to get going. So yeah, firstly, super stoked to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about a topic I think is becoming increasingly more important in the space, which is bridging the gap from traditional finance to DeFi. I've tried to keep this a little light-hearted, so my Twitter's there at the Neil Popper. There's a question I'm about to ask, so yeah, let's try and be interactive. So let's kick off with a little bit of fun. Does anyone know which character this is? Rather than focusing on the specific individual behind there, actually the themed character. So if anyone like sci-fi, for example, you might know who it is. Pop your message either on Twitter or in the chat, and then yeah, we'll get to that later. But before we get started, a little bit of background on me. So hello, I'm Neil, the CEO of Donut. Was a kid coder, built my first business out of my bedroom when I was 13. Inadvertently was a hot or not website, but ended up finding my way into financial maths, where I've spent most of my education. Was at LSE and Harvard. Before really starting a long stint in investment banking. So I started my career in Rothschild, which was a very famous sort of family-owned investment bank, and then worked as an investment professional for many years. Started Donut a couple of years ago. I'll tell you a little bit about Donut. It's not going to be the focal point of what message I want to talk about today, but a little bit about what we do. Really started with a very simple problem. It was based on having 10,000 in my account. What can I do with it to work my money harder? This was a problem that really Donut was born out of, and we really said to ourselves, look, we want to build the easiest way so that someone can earn 20x the interest. And we really have built one of the fastest experiences in the space to get started. So we made it such that your mum or anyone could get started within 5 minutes. We leverage Compound for sort of our interest-bearing product. We've got a couple of other product lines, but really we're focused on getting people saving and using DeFi on a regular basis. We tend to use some interesting mechanisms. One of those is the ability for you to convert your spare change. Sort of you buy your coffee, instead of charging you $3.50, we charge you $4, and change goes into sort of DeFi. And really made it super simple for someone to pull money on a regular basis out of their account. And this is one of actually the challenges in even outside of DeFi in sort of crypto. If you want to set up the ability to move 5,000 regularly out of an account into sort of this ecosystem, it's actually quite a challenge. And one of the challenges I'm going to talk about today is exactly this. So going from the traditional world into sort of DeFi. So for really what we want to do longer term at sort of Donut, we're sort of an application that's built on top of other protocols. We right now are working with people like Compound, but over time we're about to introduce some additional protocols. Long term, we want to stay in the yield space, and we want to really focus on that. And our goal is to really sort of aggregate access to sort of these different protocols. Similar to the same way today, if you want to go and stream music, you'll go to Apple, rather than sort of streaming on or going to sort of BitTorrent to download music. We think in sort of our sort of space that people will come to Donut, which is very sort of design focused to find their best sort of yield. How have we thought about architecting our product and sort of why is this relevant? So I think we've really focused on having a traditional banking stack and connecting this to the sort of wallet stack, which then interacts with sort of DeFi protocols. Really important. I think one of the challenges of our ecosystem is really bringing people in from the traditional world into DeFi and doing that in a very seamless way. All the fiat on ramps have done some great work at reducing some of the entry barriers. But if we really want to get to a point where people can, if they get their paycheck, get paid, move a serious amount of that into this ecosystem, that requires a little bit more work. And we've really focused on making it super simple for someone to say, hey, I want to initiate an ACH payment. They'll take the ACH payment. We'll bring that into one of our wallets, do the conversion, and then sort of go onto the protocols. So for anyone that did the little challenge, I'm not sure whether anyone got it. I'm just looking quickly at the chat. It looks like no one got it. But really the character that I sort of was alluding to earlier was the Daywalker. And the Daywalker is sort of a science fiction character that's half human, half vampire. So traditionally sort of a vampire can't sort of go out into the sunlight, and sort of a Daywalker is someone that can do exactly that. Now, some of you might be asking, well, why is that relevant? And I think that's relevant because if you think about the traditional banking ecosystem and DeFi, the real crux of it is that these two ecosystems are seen as two real worlds apart. If you look at DeFi, so here on the left-hand side, really the perception is that everything in banking is negative, it's there to be disruptive, it's on legacy rails. And really the view, on the other side of the fence, the traditional banking world is, DeFi is hard to use, it's never going to get regulated. And actually, there's actually few sort of, there's few sort of overlapping, circles into these sort of worlds. Now, if you trace back to where finance has evolved, so if you look at history, and I think history is important here because you can actually learn a lot from where we are in this sort of financial evolution. In the early 1800s and 1900s, in the early half, if you wanted to go, if you're a government and you wanted to go and borrow money, what you'd actually have to do is you'd have to go to a family. And I worked for one which was the Rothschild family. You go to the family, they'll lend you money, and you could go to war. In the early, in the 1900s and the early 2000s, what actually happened in finance was, we moved from, financial or family dynasties to these sort of corporations. And what we're now seeing is the next iteration of finance, where these decentralized communities are creating these new applications. Every day there's kind of new and new use cases. But actually, what we can't forget is where the ecosystems come from, and part of what when you look at the overall DeFi ecosystem, it's still only a fraction of global money. We live and breathe it. We see every day there's movement. Something new seems to be happening every hour, let alone every day actually. But actually, it's still a fraction of overall money. It's still a fraction of even the crypto market, let alone the stock market, the sort of debt markets or the derivative markets. And part of that, part of the reason for that, I believe is, a lot of the usage on sort of DeFi products tends to stay within a narrower subset of users. I think there were some reports put out, by Consensus on this, where they looked at wallets and the sort of super users in this space. And I think if you to sort of take a step back and say, if this ecosystem is to really live up to its true promise of being an alternative financial ecosystem, we must, as a unit, think about how we can sort of cross that bridge from, traditional finance or centralized finance towards decentralized finance. And I think today what I want to leave you with is really about the learnings that we can get from these kind of Web 2.0 applications, and how we can take those learnings to sort of create a better DeFi ecosystem. So I think there's three things that I want to focus on today, and I think there's three problems or three areas that I think we can address and sort of take the learnings from the sort of Web 2.0 ecosystem and apply them to DeFi. In short, one, a relentless focus on customer problems. I think there's a lot to learn of how what fintech did to traditional finance, and actually what DeFi can do to almost fintech and traditional finance as a result, on how they approach the sort of problems. The second is around UXUX. Can't speak about this more, given that at Donut we really think that this is a defining feature for sort of adoption. And the third is around sort of education, and that's something that if you can combine those three sort of factors, I think that then you can create kind of scalable DeFi applications. So let's dig into the sort of customer problem side of thing. Now, I think one of the best examples that I can think of is Venmo and Cash App, and how they approached actually crossing the customer problem and applying the sort of technology towards it. Venmo and Cash App started with a very simple customer problem. It's really hard to move money from A to B. And I think that it's important sort of flagging that because they started sort of problem first and then retrofitted the technology. And that's something that is super important to sort of bear in mind. I think what they then did, after the problem, is said, hey, we'll work out which tech or rails to use, and then we'll work out how to make money based off that. And that's really how sort of Venmo and Cash App sort of apply those principles, sort of to their innovation. Now, one of the areas that we've seen rise in prominence is stablecoins, and stablecoins create a great ability for someone in the United States to send some money to someone in Europe, and they can do that within seconds and not days, and they don't have to use these legacy financial rails, which cost a lot, and sort of burdensome as well. The real challenge and the real area that the ecosystem has to address is actually that for that process to actually be seamless, someone needs to be able to acquire a stable coin and then actually go into a sort of fiat currency at the other end, for that process end to end to be more efficient. So that requires some connection with the traditional world, either at the front, or some connection with the traditional world at the end, if that process is to replace, say, for example, a sort of TransferWise. And I think an interesting sort of technology that we're seeing rise to prominence is kind of layer 2, and super stoked at all the developments that are happening in this space. But if you actually look a layer down, and this is a very, very simplified example where there's two parties, call it a bank A and bank B. In the traditional financial world, if there's interactions between the two, and say bank B owes bank A 100,000, but bank B also pays bank A 75,000, what actually happens at the end of the day is there's this effect of netting off transactions, and one transaction is sent rather than thousands of transactions on a day, where bank A says, hey, to bank B, we're going to pay you 25,000. Now, why is that important? If you look at what layer 2 is doing, it's effectively, this is the traditional markets version of layer 2. This is what layer 2 is really looking to solve. But I think the key thing that we can take from the sort of what fintech has done to traditional finance, and actually what what learnings we can take from these Web 2.0 applications into DeFi, is really they focus on these problems and then work backwards with the technology rather than the other way. So to make that impact, just to sort of conclude on customer problems, I think we have to look at this from a point of needing to connect to real customer problems to really make the impact that we want. So the second area that I think if we are gonna sort of take some learnings from what the fintech applications or the neobanks did to sort of banking, one of the things that they focused relentlessly on was UX, and we've all talked about how much of a sort of problem this is and how much of a hassle it is, and I think when the average customer actually sees a wallet address or private key and these kind of complicated technical terms, at least in their eyes, this is actually a sort of barrier for sort of adoption. And I think that design is going to be ever more important in sort of DeFi. I think that there's a shortage of really good design talent, working in this space. And really, at Donut, one of the things, we're very design focused. We think that this is uber important to really drive sort of adoption. We focused on really making sure that three things work. And the first was the fiat crypto experience. Typically, even today, if you want to go from your bank account and sort of go in sort of sizable volumes onto sort of a DeFi protocol, it can take even experienced users 60 minutes. And that's something that we said, okay, well, how do we make this super slick and make it really scalable in a way that the common user can actually use that. I think the other area where people have found sort of the usability of sort of DeFi hard is a lot of wallet addresses and gas fees and processes that you've got to go through. And I'll show you a little bit about how we thought about rethinking that. And I think the third angle, so you've got the fiat crypto, you've got the complication around some of the processes, but the third one is trust. And I think especially with the rise of forks and the sort of nature of what's happened in DeFi, especially over the last few months, I think trust is a increasingly important sort of currency that sort of needed to scale in the space. So I'm giving you an example about one of the things that we really focused on at Donut to really onboard new users, but we've found this as a powerful mechanic to bring people into this space, which sort of expands sort of knowledge of kind of DeFi. And one of the things we were super stoked to bring out was the ability for you to buy a coffee, and as you buy a coffee, we convert that spare change, we batch it, and we convert that into sort of crypto assets at the end of it. This effectively, this process requires a lot of complicated connection of banking and wallet architecture. But actually what this does from a user perspective is it removes all of the friction that's required from bridging this gap. And to the user, it feels like fintech, it earns like DeFi. And to them, we really focused at Donut on making sure that super simple for someone to come in. It feels like creating handles, linking an account, you spend, you collect your change, and your change goes into this ecosystem. It really removes some of the barriers, for some of the on-ramp into this space. So then the last area that I sort of wanted to briefly touch on was education. And I think education is an area where I think the Web 2.0 applications did a lot of good work on sort of improving and sort of educating users. I think there is some work to go here in the ecosystem, and I think DeFi in itself, I think one of the things that we see even in the yield space is there's tons of different options, and yield is great, but actually what actually matters more is how does yield fit into someone else's life. So at a core principle, everyone understands this process going from left to right, where there's a lender and borrower, and if there's a bank in between, they take the margin. But on the right hand side, the lender and borrower can go sort of direct, peer to peer, and that's great. But actually, one level further that we need to educate users on is actually, well, how does this actually impact their lives? So, one of the things we talk about at Donut is, make dough go nuts. How does making more money then allow you to do the things that you really want to do with your time? An area around, sort of education is also around the risks, and this is kind of an evolving area. But I think, being sort of transparent and open about sort of risks is one thing that we sort of take really, seriously at Donut. I think that as DeFi grows, this is going to be a more and more important topic. Some really interesting innovation from Open, Cozy, Nexus Mutual around the risks and mitigating some of the risks in the space. But I think that these are the kind of, if you look at what sort of Web 2.0 did, that they were really sort of forward thinking in the way that they were transparent. They were really educating people about various changes, risks, and I think that those are some of the things that I think the DeFi ecosystem can really take to really bridge this gap from the traditional world into sort of DeFi. So what can I leave you with? How can we bridge the gap? So I think that the core thing that I think really I want as a takeaway from this is really a relentless focus on customer problems. I think that is the thing that the Web 2.0 applications did really well, and that is something that if we're to really focus on how do we get sort of DeFi replacing this legacy financial system, that's something that we really want to make sure sort of is front of mind. The second is around the on and off ramps. So I think here, wherever we have any sort of decentralized movement, if we're really to get to a point where people can seamlessly move assets and move around into this ecosystem, the on and off ramp has to be there for there to be a sort of seamless consumer adoption. This is something that I think, looking forward to seeing how this develops. Wire, MoonPay, number of providers in the space do sort of a great job on sort of the on-ramp, ecosystem. And I think that is increasingly important if we're going to build out these, really strong consumer propositions where people feel that this is a strong proposition. It's made better through DeFi, and actually I can get in and out of this ecosystem quite, easily. I think the last one that I wanted to sort of leave as a thought was actually some of the playbook and learnings might actually be from when you look at what the fintech businesses did in sort of the sort of traditional finance and actually some of the learnings there. So I think to sort of bridge the gap, I think that those three would be three of my sort of takeaways. And I think that the ecosystem is moving at an exciting pace, and super stoked to see what happens. But I think that to bridge, there's also some backward looking that can maybe help us going forward. So I think in conclusion, we need more day walkers. So looking forward to see this ecosystem grow by hopefully a few more day walkers. Cool. That was all I had planned. So I'm going to move this over to questions. Just looking through the chat here, blah, blah, blah. Are you working with any users to bridge this gap in the education realm? So yes, so we tend to put out blog articles and content around bridging the education gap. One thing that we've noticed is it does take a lot of explaining, and we've tried to make sure that the content is full. It's it can link to if they want to go deeper and they want to go to audits, they can go to audits, but maybe some users don't want to go that far. I think that that's an important consideration. But yeah, we do work with users. We have some ideas also of doing some in-app content to really focus on sort of educating the mainstream. Let's see. Hold on. Sorry, I haven't seen the ask questions section. Sorry. Does the donut token have governance features? So we don't have a donut token. I believe that someone had done a donut token, but we haven't got kind of a governance framework yet. I think that's a longer term ambition for us, but I can't really comment on that. There's a question here. Can the donut token be staked? So yeah, we don't have a token, so probably not. Okay. Do you round up USD, US dollars to Bitcoin and other crypto, and can we withdraw in crypto, or are we forced to withdraw in dollars? So yeah, great question. So right now we round up US dollars to sort of crypto, and we're just about to enable some crypto withdrawal functionality. That requires a little bit more sort of regulatory nuance. So yeah, we're about to enable that. But yeah, that's something that I think is super key, for us to enable. Has the donut protocol been audited for bugs? We don't have a protocol, so no sort of auditing required there. Let's go into the chat. One second. How big is your user base already? Yeah, good question. So we've got about 4,000 users right now. So we, a certain portion of those are a little bit more active, but yeah, we've seen a lot of pickup from sort of our sort of user base, really, especially around sort of the sort of yield proposition that we have, which has been yeah, really well received.
Cool. So I think we're running out of time. Do you want to wrap up with anything?
No, I don't think I saw anyone get the Daywalker. So oh no, someone did get Blade, but no. Thank you for joining all. Like I said, stoked to see what's going to happen over the next few months and years. So yeah, just reach out to me if you want to chat, or tell me what your favorite donut is.
Thanks. We're going to transition to our next talk now. Thanks again.